Hello and welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I'm in the middle of November, so there is now a mustache on my face. This week, I'm going to be talking about some running tips and how running slower can actually make you have a faster race. What a lot of people don't realise is that the speed isn't necessarily the only factor running a fast race, and even for advanced athletes, running slower can be quite beneficial. This also applies to shorter races as well as the longer ones. Again, speed isn't critical. If you look at your 1k or 2k times or your average pace over those shorter distances, it'll generally be a lot higher than what you can sustain for 5 kilometers and upwards. And what this tells you is that you have the speed, you just don't have the endurance. So we'll discuss what you can do to change that and how you can kind of benefit from that principle to go faster in your races. If you find this beneficial, make sure to like, share and subscribe. Let's get started. When I start working with new athletes, I'll look back at the training they've done before they've started working with them. And a lot of the time I see a huge amount of high intensity intervals, short sprints, fast laps, 400s, 200s, 100s, and it's very clear they're working on speed. Now this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It makes sense that you'd work on speed to run a faster race. But it can be a bit of a mistake, and the reasons for that are this. If you're working at the high intensity all the time, you're going to become a lot better at producing lactate because you're developing your glycolytic system, or your anaerobic system. And this is sometimes a good thing. But if you're constantly working on this system, then it neglects other systems. So what you get is this better production of lactate, a higher tolerance to it, and maybe even a raised VO2, but it doesn't necessarily help you sustain them for any prolonged periods. You may find yourself getting a little bit of an imbalance between your aerobic and your anaerobic systems. And if your anaerobic system is stronger, you're going to start favouring things it likes. So you're going to start burning more carbohydrate and relying on carbohydrate as a fuel. Now this can be a problem over longer races, as it means you're going to have to take on a huge amount of energy, and it might be very difficult to take on as much as you're burning. Whereas if you've got better fat metabolization, because you have a better aerobic system, then you might be able to sustain paces a bit longer because you're not burning quite as much carbohydrate and you have more fuel. Secondly, if you're producing a huge amount of lactate because your anaerobic system is working so hard and your aerobic system isn't able to clear it, you're going to get lactate accumulation. And an accumulation of lactate basically shuts down the muscles and slows you down quite significantly over races. And it's kind of the death blow for fast running when your legs fill with lactate and it just shuts down your ability to produce force and speed. So what are the benefits of running slow? Well, if you're running slowly, you're going to be a lot more aerobic, and you're going to selectively be working on the aerobic system, which means you're going to get all the great benefits that come with that. You're going to get better heart function, you're going to get a bigger, stronger heart, you're going to get better blood flow with better vascularization, and you're going to get an increased number of mitochondria in the muscles, which are really important for generating energy. So probably the best thing about low intensity running or low speed running is the amount of volume that you can do. And when you do a lot of volume at low intensity, you really get those aerobic developments. What actually starts to happen is that your threshold will go up. The reason being is because you're able to stay aerobic at higher speeds. So at more kind of faster speeds, you're not going to be using as much carbohydrate, and you're also not going to be producing as much lactate. And the fact that you're running a little bit slower means that you're going to put less impact on the joints per stride. And over time, this is going to help you recover, which means you're going to be able to train a lot more consistently and a lot more regularly than you would have been before. So how slow is slow? It's kind of hard to tell between person to person. Basically, you're trying to stay below your lactate threshold. For some people, the easiest way to do this if they haven't actually got that test is to go by the sentence test. If you can't say a full sentence without losing your breath, then you're probably not aerobic. So you should actually practice while running, saying a longish sentence, and if you can complete it without losing your breath, you're probably running at the right intensity. For people who want to be a bit more precise, I would suggest using a heart rate monitor. Heart rate monitors are an excellent tool because they completely take out variables that might come into the session, like wind. If you're running into a headwind, you're going to be running slower, so pace kind of goes out the window. You'll have to work a lot harder to run into the wind, and vice versa if you have a tailwind. Now, there's a lot of heart rate monitors out there. Something like, if you're using a Garmin, stick to the Garmin heart rate belts, or if you're looking for something that can be added on later, the Wahoo ticker belts are fantastic as well. I'll leave a link in the description for those. So how much slow running is enough and how much is too much? Well, basically the majority of your training should be done at pretty low intensity and should be pretty slow and easy. probably only 10 to 15% of your training should be done above threshold, because you really don't need that much of it to get the benefits from it. Short strides thrown in throughout sessions can actually be enough to keep that kind of biomechanical practice of running fast, and only a little bit of threshold and VO2 work is actually needed to maintain and develop those capabilities. The only time that you might want to start including more fast or sort of race pace work is in the last final stages preparing for a race, where you actually want to just kind of get a good feel for how fast you should be running, and you start to learn the pace you're going to need to hold for your race. So there you have it. That's why I think running slow is the best way to actually get an improved race time. At some point, you will want to do some speed work, but for most people, it's the endurance that's really the critical piece to running fast. So focus on getting good endurance, sprinkle in a little bit of speed work, and you should be fine. If you enjoyed this and you found it beneficial, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Until next time, thanks for joining me.